Hey, thank you for joining us for part two with Kristi Steffens and our Women's Ministries Director. Hope you enjoy this episode too. So in talking about that, there was something that you mentioned about calling out giftings in others. So in the platform that I am on and in the position that I occupy as a superintendent, a lot of times we will help churches navigate through transitions.
Sure.
And a lot of the times, the pastor who is leading that ministry really, transition becomes more of an afterthought later on in the years rather than a forethought of how can I raise up. And I will just tell you, sometimes our preconceived notions of who our successor is going to be is a young man.
Yeah.
Okay?
Right.
You know, well, who's the young man that's going to lead this church after I'm done? I would love to encourage them to think about, well, maybe it's not just a young man, but maybe there's a young lady. You mentioned the number of lead pastors. We only have 700 and some change. 722. Yeah. Now, in Georgia, we've got a handful. We do, and they are doing a phenomenal job.
Yes.
Emily down in Brunswick, knocking it out of the park. Melody over in Savannah, knocking it out of the park. And we have others as well. So how do we get people to think about that transition and that handing of the baton? It doesn't necessarily have to be a young man. There may be a young woman in your congregation that has the anointing of God on their life to preach the gospel and reach a community. How do we change our mindset about that?
Ooh, that's so tough because it's so ingrained. And it's honestly then what you're looking at is the transition is a board that you really have to talk to. There may be a pastor who's helping you pass that baton, but a lot of times it's a board. And so that's a conversation that has to take place at district council.
Well, I think we began to platform those young women and use them in those things and really get our congregations to think a little more broadly about, well, it's not just the young man. It is, hey, you know, like my daughter's a youth pastor who does...
Representation matters.
Yeah.
But mindset's a little bit different.
Yeah.
So, because you can have token women in any position in any place.
Right.
But impact is different. When the women actually have... So if your daughter were to preach and give an altar call and there was actually impact on a long-term basis, that changes mindsets and that changes hearts. So most people are welcome to like a woman speaking on Mother's Day, but if a woman were to do the majority of the speaking, that touches on a completely different heart mindset. Honestly, this is a challenge I give to a lot of the guys that I'm close with who are leading really well, is how many women are you actually listening to right now? Like, I don't want to put you on the spot, but like, do you listen to any women's podcast? Do you read any books written by women? Do you listen to any sermons written or like preached by women? So how many voices are you currently actually taking in that are the sound of a woman? So for me, I've grown up under men's ministry, so I can listen to you give a sports analogy and apply that to my own life. The converse is not true for a man in a congregation. When you start talking about a shopping experience as your idea, the guys check out. So it's not just about platforming, it's about educating them how to connect. But then conversely, we've got to have a mindset shift where men actually hear the voice of women and can give it credit and give it merit and not dismiss it.
That is an incredible perspective. No. Well, that's why you're here.
Yeah.
I mean, is so, you know, and just for those who are watching, I gave her license, you know, hey, come in here and really share your heart. And that's well, we need an advocate though. And get and challenging people to think outside of their familiar boxes, and that's what we do. We get, and I know I get into a rut. And you just challenged me. How many female leaders am I listening to on my podcast? And the truth is, and I'm ashamed to say this, maybe one, maybe.
Right.
Now I do listen to speakers like preachers, you know, and sermons of those things, and there's an entirely different perspective. Like you just said, the shopping experience versus the sports analogy. Well, you know, hey man, I just, by the way, it's okay to go shopping for more than just shoes, okay?
Yes.
But that is an incredible thing for us to think about. How many are we actually utilizing to speak into our own lives? And that is an incredible perspective.
And I'll also say, like, as a leader, then the grace. So just like statistically, the guys have more reps. So when you have a woman come in and preach and they don't knock it out of the park or they don't quite connect, it's because they don't have as many reps. And so as you invite them in to lead, you have to give a little bit of space for them to not be
Yes.
Perfect. But then conversely, I would say to any woman who is given an opportunity, we have a huge responsibility to be ready and prepared and do everything in our power to speak the message that God has given us in a way that is palatable. So we can't get up and just try to defy and go, you'll hear it the way that God, I want to say it. You have to really challenge yourself to know your audience and be prepared and knock it out of the park for the girls that are following.
Look, when I came up, my pastor put me in the pulpit on Sunday nights. Now, we don't do that anymore, hardly. Shout out to Sunday Night Church. But he put me in the pulpit, and I'll tell you, the first, I don't even want to think about how bad it was, because it was really bad.
Yeah.
I mean, the first time I ever spoke, I had pages and pages of notes, and it was 12 minutes. Because I talked so fast. It was horrible. And I'm trying to block those memories out. I think you can block painful memories out as a self-preservation tool, and I'm trying to block those out. But doing those Sunday nights and Wednesday nights and occasionally on a Sunday morning and whatnot, you're right, it's those reps. And so are we putting our female leaders into the pulpit and giving them those opportunities, not relegating it to just a Bible study in the fellowship hall, but actually giving them that platform to preach the Word of God and give them that practice? You're absolutely right.
I hear a lot of guys will say, like, well, I just don't have anybody who has those giftings. And I'm like, okay, but how are you cultivating those giftings if you never give them an opportunity?
Well, that was going to be my next question.
Sorry.
No, you're reading my mind.
Yeah.
There's the next question is, so you, and a lot of this comes back to discernment. And so we're seeing, I see in my girls, and specifically the oldest one, that there's a leadership disposition.
Right.
And there's a huge heart for the hurting too, ultra high compassion. And so in encouraging, not just verbally, but seeing in them those things and encouraging them, speaking to them, man, you got a great heart. You really love people. Man, you love people so well. You have a great leadership disposition. You have a great mind in those things. So how do we pull out of those young leaders using our discernment that, man, maybe God does have his hand on that young lady to really bring it out? How do we do that? How do we pull that encouragement out of them?
Yeah. So, man, there's so many different ways that you can, and it really, to me, is based off of your own personality and your own ministry's kind of way that it functions. But I would say my number one way is anytime I see someone who has a sphere of influence, you can just tell they walk in the room and people flock to them. I then end up kind of talking to them and start talking about what their life is and where they've come from and what their burden is and what they're passionate about, and helping them to learn to articulate it has been the big thing for me. And then giving them direction and mentorship. But I think there's so many great mentorship programs out there right now. I think like Lisa Potter has one, and we do one here at the district called Collective Journey, and that's through Lisa Potter. There's a lot of books out there, like Restless is incredible. There's that can help them start formulating what it looks like. But it's really the discernment. It's you looking in your crowd and going, okay, who is currently serving? Who cares about the details? Who's showing up early as a volunteer? Who's problem solving without causing issues? Who's managing conflict really well? All of those are incredible giftings, especially the managing conflict part. If you can't lead unless you can do that, right? So as you start to see women functioning, you can call them up and give them different aspects of the ministry and let them try things and fail and move forward. To say there's like one specific formula, it's tough because it's really based on each personality of the leader. But we have to start identifying them. And I will say this, I know that we are looking at a shortage in the global church of leaders. And my guess is there is a lot of women who just don't see it in themselves. And if someone would tap them on the shoulder, we would not have a shortage anymore. 60% of our church is made up of women. So if we were to start tapping on some shoulders and start identifying leadership, I think that we would see a huge shift in those numbers.
We would solve our problems.
We could.